Hi, I'm George.
Hi.
Hi.
How's
Nice
it
to
going?
meet you.
It's nice to meet you. I
You
am
too.
Meka Kekapetum from Sandy Lake, Ontario.
And I am Darian Morris from Casablanca Lake.
Lovely, lovely, lovely to meet you both. And everybody. So who's around? Who is there? There's people behind you too, right?
Yep,
Yeah, our audience.
we have people back here.
Hi there.
Yeah. Anyways, we are here at Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School, and we wanted to ask you a couple questions.
Happy to.
Okay. To start off, you have had an extensive career, but how did you get your start? How did you go from a forklift operator working Toronto Pearson Airport to a television host interviewing big artists like Eminem?
I think probably because I didn't think about it or plan it, to be honest with you. I was a movie theater usher. I was driving that forklift on the weekends at the airport. Realized pretty quickly that I wasn't really meant for, like, I didn't want to do, I mean, I could do it, but I didn't want to spend my life waking up doing things that didn't feel creative. And I was working at a movie theater as an usher, thinking maybe one day I might become some kind of an independent director. I wanted to be an artist or an architect, but I either failed the classes or got kicked out of the classes required to pursue that. And I didn't really have a plan. I remember going to my guidance counselor at high school. He wanted to meet with me because I was one of those kids who didn't really, I just, like I said, I just wasn't that ambitious about life and I had no real calling in my mind. And I told him I wanted to become a funeral director, become a mortician. And he thought, I was listening to a lot of heavy metal music at the time. I still am. So it just seemed like the right thing to do, a lot of goth. So it seemed like the right thing to do. I thought I'd become a funeral director. I went to a couple funeral homes, started wandering around them, and looking at that as a possible career. And then my guidance counselor said to me, I don't think you should be in that field. You're too, he said, you just have more to do than that. He goes, I think you need to be around people. And so I just started to look at options. And honestly, I was sort of working at the theater late one night and my theater was right next door to an adult learning center for Humber College. And I went to go get my motorcycle license, but you had to sign up there because that's where they would do the course, was in the parking lot of the college. I had no intention ever of going to college, ever. Didn't want to go to university, didn't apply to university, none of that. And there was a page in that course calendar that said radio broadcasting. I went, all right, screw it, I'll do that. And because I loved radio and I loved music and I loved talking about politics. I used to call radio stations when I was 10 and 11 years old to get on talk shows. So it just seemed like a good fit. And that's kind of how it started. But it's like a lot of kids, especially when you're not, I was very lucky that I had no pressure on me to accomplish anything. Right? My mom didn't care what I did for a living. My family didn't care what I did for a living. My family was a family of jobs, driving forklifts, working at the Ford assembly plant, putting seats in cars. Like that's my family's job and jobs. So I think I grew up without any pressure to achieve anything, except I did have a lot of pressure to behave properly, which I was good and bad at, throughout the course of my life. But never any pressure to do anything for a living, never any pressure to get good grades, really. So I was allowed to just kind of find a path in that way. And then once I got into the business, I started working really hard because that's the one thing I do have is work ethic, and I have a lot of discipline. I don't have a lot of motivation. I don't have a lot of ambition in that sense, not for myself, but I'm definitely disciplined, and so I worked really hard on that.
Wow. What was it like to sit down with some of the biggest celebrities? How did you stay calm?
Well, if I'm being honest with you, I'm not that impressed by celebrity, right? So it's I was calm because they're just regular people like we know. And what I really respect is the craft, and I really respect people who know how to tell a story. Because the ones who can communicate to you why what they do means so much to them and perhaps to other people. But I was never that, maybe it's because I was always so impressed by my grandmother and my mom and my uncle and my sister. I was like, wow, why would I be impressed by this actor? The people in my family have accomplished enormous things as human beings, and they didn't have the money or the fame, right? They did it through just grit and determination and grace too, as Gord Downie said. So a will and determination and grace too. So I didn't have that chip in my brain that made me nervous because I don't really get nervous in general. Maybe early in my career I was shy, but not nervous around people like that. And also, I sometimes I look at it like a nice opportunity to try to push myself to see who cares if it's Tom Cruise, who cares if it's somebody like that. Let's just go. Let's see what we can do. And to me, that was the sport of it, the fun of it. And being nervous is like, why? Life's too short to be nervous. Life is too short to be nervous about these sorts of things. And my brain chemistry doesn't do that for me.
Who is someone you want to interview that you have never had the chance to?
Neil Young. I would love to interview Neil Young. Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Tom Waits, like those are like the big three of the singers that I grew up really, really connecting to. I think if you look throughout the course of any artist's career, they have been big and not big. They have been successful and not successful in terms of the industry metrics, right? But if you look at Neil, he's never not been cool and he's never not been right. And I look at Neil in that respect, and I think he's never not been relevant. And I'm really fascinated by somebody's singular determination to never sell out, to never sell out. And I respect it so much. And also he's written so many amazing songs that I really stay with me throughout my life. So Neil Young is for sure at the top of my list in that sense.
What was the most memorable interview you have done?
Well, this one with you, this will be there. I hope this is going to be this. I'm feeling good about this. Most memorable interview I've ever done. I think about talking to Patti Smith and how much impact Patti had on me as a youngster, and being able to spend time with Patti because she's funny. She's funny. She's open. She's not afraid to go to the dark places, which is something I really, really like about certain kinds of people. If they're willing to sit in those places, not to wallow, not to put themselves at risk, but to really try to spend time understanding why they feel the way they feel. So Patti was really impactful on me. Bob Newhart, a great comedian. Another one was KRS-One, this rapper from the 80s, 90s and continues. I think KRS-One is one of the greatest MCs of all time. And he and Chuck D he was Chuck D from Public Enemy, had really big impact on me when I was 14, 15, 16 years old. And I think about, getting to sit across from people from that era of my life. Same with Beastie Boys. Spending time with Beastie Boys was in my apartment in New York, right around the corner from where they first started making music. Being connected to that kind of thing is really, really impactful for me. So those ones really stick. The answer is always different. It's always different because it depends on where my head's at that day. Over time, spending time with Michael J. Fox is really compelling because Mike is kind of all the things that you want in a person when you're speaking with them. He hits all the notes. But yeah, for me, if I look back now as an older fella, Beastie Boys, Public Enemy, Boogie Down Productions, Led Zeppelin, like being in the rooms with those cats is pretty great.
Next question. You are known for asking tough questions. Did you ever ask a question that you regret?
I've got so many questions I regret. So many questions I regret. Yeah, my life is filled with regrets. I think sometimes, I've been doing this for 30 odd years, 33 years now. And I was so young when I started. I got on the radio for the first time when I was 18 years old, 19 years old. When I had that interview show on CBC, I had just turned 30, 31 years old. I was so young. And so you're doing your best every day to try to get better and push the boundaries. Asking tough questions is really easy. The hard part is asking a difficult question and having the person hear it, not think it's a difficult question. Right? And anybody can ask a question that will pick a fight. But to ask a question that is challenging and makes the person want to open up, that's the real art to this. And as I was learning how to do that, a lot of times I got it wrong. But I don't really worry so much about that. A little bit. Sometimes I regret the questions, but
Yeah.
But not all the time. I put it in context, of who
Yeah.
I was when I was.
Hmm. Is there any questions that you regret not asking?
There was once when I worked at Much Music, I had a question I wanted to ask a prime minister, and the boss of Much Music wouldn't let me ask it. And then at the end of the interview, I felt ridiculous for not asking the question, but she had told me I couldn't ask it, and I will never forget that. And I think that really put me on a path to not listen to anybody ever again when it came to
Yeah.
things like that. But that was one of my first TV jobs. It was brand new. I took the person who told me not to ask it was a bit of a legend, and I'll never forget not asking that question. It'll haunt me till the day I die. And I, yeah, it changed me that moment at the end of the interview. So I went, screw it, I will never listen again. I'll listen a little bit, but I'm gonna make my own decision.
Yeah.
What was the question?
It was something that the politician promised to do and then lied about.
Ooh.
And that was my very first question, and yeah, it'll stay with me.
Yeah. I
I
wonder.
was also young enough to be bold enough to just ask that question up front. I thought it would have been great if I had done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. On to one of your most recent projects, the stories that made us. You were able to travel across Canada and meet all kinds of people. What is something you learned from that experience?
That the people are really connected to the things that influenced them when they were young. That no matter how hard life gets, we still have moments and pockets in our hearts and our minds for some lovely times when we didn't have as many pressures on us. Like a lot of people you talk to are older, life has kind of reached out to them a little bit. But when they were younger, they're really connected to some of the stuff they watched as a kid. And I also realized, I think I knew this intrinsically, but we didn't really know it until you know it, but you don't know it till you actually see it. Is that a lot of Canadians really like being Canadians, and as divided as we are, and we are super divided, and for lots of legitimate reasons. There's a lot of unity here too in other areas, and it was nice to be reminded of that.
You were involved in many humanitarian projects. Why is that so important to you?
I mean, I don't really look at them like humanitarian projects. You know what I think about? I think about that it's my job as a person. So no matter what I did for a living, I would, no matter what I did for a living, I would do my part to try to impact the neighborhood, right? And sometimes the neighborhood is one that's directly the one I live in, and sometimes it's somebody else's neighborhood. So I don't, I only think of it like it's my responsibility as a human to do it. It's my duty as a human to do it, and I don't think I have an option. I think I have to always do that I think we all have to do that stuff.
I agree with you. Moving on. After everything you have done, you still remain engaged in the music scene. Why is that so important to you?
Oh, music is my whole reason for being. It's my whole reason for being. Music speaks to me. I hear music in a particular way. I, I, what's that quote? Is it the Nietzsche quote? Like, life without music would be a mistake, or something to that effect. And I don't have any spirituality. I don't believe in any of that stuff. None of that reaches me on any level. But I was raised by somebody who does, and that my mother's relationship with spirituality is one of great fervor, and I have that same fervor as it relates to music. Music is a it's like an omniverse inside my mind, right? And I the other day I was driving and I was listening to the news and I was swearing at the radio, getting upset. Like, if you follow the news and news stories and you're just sort of caught in the middle of all the garbage that is the stuff that you hear about in the world. And I had this moment where I just thought, I don't need to do this. And I turned it off and I put on a song. I put on this punk band called Rancid, who I've been listening to since they came out, even before when two of the guys were in a band called Operation Ivy. And I put on Rancid full volume in my pickup truck whipping down the highway, and everything felt better. So music is the medicine for me, in a real meaningful way.
Oh,
And I
Okay.
always want to listen. I still listen to a lot of the old stuff, but I'm always trying to find new music, you know. But definitely the classics are still regular. I'm listening. I got Beethoven playing downstairs right now, you know.
How do you think the Canadian music scene has changed since you first started covering it?
There wasn't much of a Canadian music scene, you know, when I was on the come up. There were a lot of great bands, of course, but there wasn't an industry per se, not the same way that it is now. We had the gods. There was Joni and Neil. There was Rush, right? There was like the big bands. You know, the Tragically Hip hadn't started yet. Then in the early '90s, late '80s and early '90s, a bunch of here's what I think happened. The music that was really big in the U.S. and around the world in the '80s was was not the kind of music like if you were doing big shiny pop tunes, if you were doing that kind of glammy rock metal. If a kid from Markham or Cold Lake, Alberta walked down the street wearing that, doing those songs, it just didn't feel like it was us. It felt like it was LA, or it felt like it was London, or it felt like it was another place, New York. But what happened in the late '80s, early '90s, when the alternative scene in both rock and hip hop became very connected to a rawness, that was more in line, I think, with who we were and where we were. So our band suddenly on the radio or in videos with Much Music, side by side with Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Foo Fighters, well, later Foo Fighters, our bands fit like we wore the same thrift shop clothes back then. Before vintage shopping, thrifting was a thing. Thrifting was just what we did with my mom because we couldn't afford clothes. So it was just thrifting. So all these artists, I think aesthetically and culturally, what was starting to build with youth culture in especially in the United States was very much in line with where we were as Canadian youth, and so I think that's when it all kind of came together. And that really helped. And then it's about an 8 or 9 year window. The kids who grew up listening to those songs on the radio, all of a sudden got to then it was their turn for the next wave. There was a radio station that finally started called Flow in Toronto, which was a hip hop station. We didn't have one, right? So now there's so there was a couple good rock stations, but there was no hip hop station. And if you like rap, you have to listen to a station in upstate New York around Buffalo called WBLK. And so we would catch that late at night. There was some college radio. And so all of a sudden, all these genres at the same time the kids found them. And so when they were at the age where they were ready to make records, they had already had Canadian examples before them. And I think everybody was just standing on the shoulders of the giants that came before them. And it just took a long time for it to get there and then all these people in the industry also learned how to do it. The record business learned how to do it. The radio business learned how to do it. Much Music learned how to do it. So we kind of all sort of came up at the same time, building this version of it. And so you have now where, I mean, look at how enormous Canadian artists are around the world in every genre. And I think that's really, really special. But it's definitely changed because in the very beginning, it wasn't much of an open industry.
Is there anything new on the horizon or anything you're working on that you're excited about right now?
There's a few things. I just wrote and directed 2 short films. One of them is done. The next one is the second one is in its post-production of visual effects. So that's almost done. When those are done, I'll start releasing them, which is exciting. I've wanted to make films my whole life, so it's been nice to finally be able to do it. I'm working on a new music series that's coming, and then a new interview series as well. So there's definitely a lot on the horizon, perhaps too much, but that's just how my brain works. It's just go for it all and see what happens. What I've never lost, and I think this is the key for me, is I have never, not only have I not lost an ounce of the gasoline that fuels me, I think there's more. I think the size of my tank got bigger. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I know that time is running out. Maybe it's because I find the most amount of peace in this, but I have never ever lost, and I'm so grateful for that. The energy, the passion to connect with people using great things, whether it's music or film or books or just conversation. And I think as busted up as this culture is, it doesn't have to remain that way. And I don't think I can fix it. I don't think you can fix it. I don't think we can fix it all. But I also don't think, like, no one's asking us to change the world. People tell you got to change the world. You don't have to really change the world. You just have to have the impact you can, where you are or how you want to do it. And I think I can do it. I know you can do it. And to me, that I've never lost the desire to do that. It's not always easy. It's not always fun, but it doesn't have to be easy or fun to matter. And so I'm a big believer in just do the work. I'm a huge believer in personal accountability. So if there's something that I'm not doing, I, to a fault, will not blame anybody but myself. Even sometimes it's not my fault, I'll still blame me, right? Because I don't believe the system will ever be there to help us. I don't believe it has ever been there to help us for the most part. So even though it ought to be, I figured, well, I'll never rely on it, so I'm going to try to make the change where I can make the change to a fault, right? And that's not always effective, not always helpful, but it's how I'm wired. And so I really feed that kind of work ethic in me. And that always keeps the future prospects exciting for me because I'm always pushing my own boundaries.
You mentioned you have projects in the works. Do you have anything to say about that? Curious.
Yeah, a new live talk series, a new interview series, I'm working on bringing back the House of Strombo concert series. So there's some pretty practical stuff, and then the films, like I had mentioned. So there's a lot of content that I've been working on, for sure. I've been working with the United Nations World Food Program as well. So we're doing our best there in making some appeals to raise money for some tragedies around the world, Gaza, of course, and we know what's happening in Sudan and Congo. So there's DRC. So there's a lot of work being done in that respect. Sometimes in terms of fundraisers or making videos or things like that. But yeah, it's like a million different ways to tell a story.
Would you be interested in coming to Wake the Giant next year?
Is that the sleeping giant in Thunder Bay, that piece of land in the water?
It's Dennis Franklin's Cromartie High School's music festival that we host every year. It's to help the Indigenous students get comfortable here and like to welcome them and all that.
If I can, I would. But the sleeping giant, that is the name of the thing in the water, right? Is
Yeah.
it called? Yeah. Got it. I remember when I worked up. Yeah, so I would love to. If I can, I would. I remember being up there with Rick Campanelli from Much Music, and we shot a series up there, and it was so much fun. I haven't been to Thunder Bay in a long time. It'd be nice to come back.
Last year we actually had the Black Eyed Peas, so it would be nice to have someone new.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. When do you do it?
It's September 12th.
Oh, I think when is the APJ thing?
It's September 13th.
Oh, so I have to be in Toronto September 13th. Well, let's figure it out.
It's
Let's
Saturday.
let's figure it out. So is yours on a Saturday?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm on a board of a charity that has an event on September 13th. Well, let's see. Let's see if we can figure it out. I don't know if there's an early morning flight out of Thunder Bay back to Toronto. I'm sure there is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And we have one more question left, and that is, do you like Bannock?
Dude, yes, I was in Iqaluit. I was in Iqaluit last, I think it was in August or September.
Yeah.
Maybe, I can't remember.
August.
But it was August. I was in Iqaluit in August, and we were shooting some footage up there, and a woman sent me a message on Instagram saying, she said, "I make the best bannock. Where are you?" So I wrote her back on Instagram. I was just standing in an intersection filming. Suddenly she shows up with a bunch of bannock wrapped in tinfoil in a bag, and it was all gone in the first like 2 hours. We ate it all. It was so great. It was so great.
That was our last question.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.